Welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading from UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Today we are taking the important news from New Delhi edition of Hindu newspaper dated 29th November 2022. Now this news appears on page number 1 and it says that radio telescope floating in Karnataka waters throws light on the nature of early stars and galaxies. Now this news is about Saras 3, which is a radio telescope, and it has been designed and built at the Raman Research Institute in Bengaluru. So the Saras 3 telescope, which is shaped antenna measurement of the background radio spectrum, observes radio wavelength emitted from various galaxies right from the time of Big Bang. So it says that astronomers and researchers have been able to determine the properties of radioluminous galaxies. Now radioluminous galaxies means such galaxies which emits radio wavelength even beyond their visible structures. So it says that astronomers and researchers through Saras 3 have been able to determine the properties of these radioluminous galaxies formed just 200 million years after the Big Bang, a period known as cosmic dawn. Further, this instrument has provided insight into the properties of earliest radio loud galaxies. Now, radioluminous galaxies or radio loud galaxies are the same thing, meaning such galaxies emitting radio wavelength and also that they are more luminous at such radio wavelengths. That's why they are called radio loud galaxies or radioluminous galaxies, which means they shine more brightly at radio wavelength. So the observation highlights that Saras 3 provides insight into the properties of the earliest radio loud galaxies, which are usually powered by supermassive black holes. Now supermassive black holes are obviously massive black holes and they are generally found at the center of galaxy. Now these observations at times becomes important and UPSC is also interested in such observations. Now look into this question asked in 2019 prelims. The question was, recently scientists observed the merger of giant black holes billions of light years away from the Earth. So what is the significance of this observation? The options were Higgs boson particles were detected, B. Gravitational waves were detected, C. Possibility of intergalactic space travel through wormhole was confirmed, and D. It enabled the scientists to understand singularity. So as you can see, various terms associated with physics have been highlighted here, such as Higgs boson particles, gravitational waves, and also singularity. So any development in the field of astronomy which provides more insight into the formation of the universe becomes important from the perspective of UPSC examination, both from the prelims perspective and also from the mains perspective under GS paper 3. Now when we talk about radio waves, these are another form of light, or we can say another form of electromagnetic radiation. Now as you all know that apart from visible light, there are other forms of electromagnetic radiation including infrared radiation, microwaves, radio waves on one hand, and on the shorter wavelength side, ultraviolet radiation, X-rays and gamma rays. So it highlights that there are many different forms of electromagnetic radiation such as radio waves, microwaves, ultraviolet rays and X-rays. And each of these electromagnetic radiation is characterized by a different wavelength. That is, their wavelength differs. So it says that, for example, radio waves can be several mile longs while gamma rays are smaller than atoms. And since the wavelength of gamma rays are smaller than atoms, hence they are more destructive. So it says that the light we see, which is the visible light, falls somewhere in the middle of this electromagnetic spectrum. Now look into this question asked by UPSC in 2011. The question was, a layer in the Earth's atmosphere called ionosphere facilitates radio communication. Why? Options were, first, the presence of ozone causes the reflection of radio waves to Earth. No, it's not the presence of ozone, rather the presence of ions which reflect the radio waves, and the first option becomes incorrect. Second, radio waves have a very long wavelength. Now generally radio waves have a very long wavelength. However, there are certain radio waves which have shorter wavelength as well. Now look into the various ranges of wavelength of radio waves. As you can see, they can be extremely long, that is more than 100 km, but they can be extremely short as well, from 1 millimeter to 1 centimeter or 1 to 1 centimeter. And the radio wavelengths further varies from 10 to 100 kilometers, 1 to 10 kilometer, or even 100 meter to 1 kilometer. So the wavelength of radio waves varies from being very small to being very large. Hence, saying that radio waves always have a very long wavelength cannot be correct. Hence, this statement also becomes incorrect. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? Hence, the correct answer becomes D, that is neither 1 nor 2. So we need to be very specific and certain about certain terms which has been used in the statements of UPSC question. Now we have already discussed about radioluminous galaxies. So it says that a particular type of active galaxy which emits more light at radio wavelengths than at visible wavelength, and hence also known as radioluminous galaxies or radio loud galaxy. Now radio galaxies are driven by non-thermal emission and are giant regions of radio emissions going well beyond their visible structure. And since the emission of radio wavelength goes well beyond their visible structure, this characteristics has helped the SARAS-3 to identify these radio wavelengths of such galaxies. So the scientists have stated that SARAS-3 has improved our understanding of astrophysics of cosmic dawn, that is the happenings just after Big Bang, telling us that less than 3% of the gaseous matter within the early galaxies were converted into stars, and the fact that earliest galaxies that were bright in radio emissions were also strong in X-rays. So this is one of the important observation of SARAS-3. That is, less than 3% of the gaseous matter only got converted into stars, and the earliest galaxies that were bright in radio emissions were also strong in X-rays. And this feature particularly heated the cosmic gas in and around the early galaxies. So these are some of the important observations made by the SARAS-3 telescope. Now talking about Raman Research Institute, this is an autonomous research institute engaged in research in basic sciences, and it is situated in Bengaluru. This institute was founded in 1948 by the Indian physicist and Nobel laureate Sir C.V. Raman. However, this institute was restructured in 1972 to become an aided autonomous institute receiving funds from Department of Science and Technology of Government of India. Now these informations also becomes handy in case question is also asked on the Raman Research Institute. Now coming back to this question asked by UPSC in 2019. So the question was that recently scientists observed the merger of giant black holes billions of light years away from the Earth. What is the significance of this observation? Now this event was captured by LIGO, which is Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. And as you can see that these are the two arms of LIGO. So when these gravitational waves are detected, it causes the length of these arms to stretch slightly. So it says that a gravitational wave is an invisible yet incredibly fast ripple in space, and gravitational waves travel at the speed of light. And these waves squeeze and stretch anything in their path as they pass by, and they also create ripples in space. So it says that the most powerful gravitational waves are created when objects move at very high speeds. Some examples of events which can create these gravitational waves are when a star explodes asymmetrically, when two big stars orbit each other, and when two black holes orbit each other and also merge. So during these phenomena, gravitational waves are detected. So in 2015, scientists detected gravitational waves for the very first time, and they did it by using the instrument called LIGO or Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. So LIGO can detect this squeezing and stretching of space, and each LIGO observatory has two arms, as you can see in this picture, which are more than 4 kilometers long, and a passing gravitational wave makes the arm to change slightly. So it says that these first gravitational waves happened when two black holes crashed into one another, and this collision happened 1.3 billion years ago, but the ripples didn't make it to Earth until 2015. So these instruments helps us to understand not only about gravitational waves but also other phenomena which happened post Big Bang. And because of this, this question was asked in 2019 in the prelims examination. So these observations made by SARAS-3 becomes important and can be asked in your upcoming prelims examination. And this topic gets covered under GS paper 3 under Science and Technology, and in the prelims under general science. Now let's take up this news appearing on page number 3. It says that Gujjars and Bakerwals of Jammu and Kashmir call off their protest against according scheduled tribe status to Paharis under Article 342 of the Indian Constitution. So the government has decided to accord scheduled tribe status to Paharis, who are a linguistic group residing mainly in the Pir Panjal range of Jammu and Kashmir and also adjacent areas. Now, since the government has decided to accord scheduled tribe status to Paharis, the Gujjars and the Bakerwals, who already have been accorded scheduled tribe status, they have launched a protest. Now, so far, these are the 12 communities who have been accorded scheduled tribe status in Jammu and Kashmir. These includes Balti, Beda, Bot or Boto, Brokpa, Drokpa, Tad and Shin, Shangpa, Gara, Mon, Purikpa, Gujjar, Bakerwal, Gaddi and Sippi. So other than these 12 communities, the government intends to include Paharis within the scheduled tribe list. Now look into this question asked by UPSC in 2014. The question was, with reference to Changpa community of India, consider the following statements. First, they live mainly in the state of Uttarakhand. Now this statement is incorrect because the Changpa community are the tribal community of Jammu and Kashmir, hence the first option becomes incorrect. Second, they rear the Pashmina goats that yield a fine wool. Yes, this statement is correct. Third, they are kept in the category of scheduled tribes. Yes, this is also correct. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So here the correct answer become B, that is 2 and 3 only. Similarly, another question was asked with respect to another group and their cultural practices. So the question was, every year a month-long ecologically important campaign or festival is held during which certain communities or tribes plant saplings of fruit-bearing trees. Which of the following are such communities or tribes? And here the correct answer was Gond and Korku. As the Gond and Korku tribes of Madhya Pradesh, Betul and Harda districts celebrate their festival named Hari Jiroti. Now this is a month-long festival of greenery during which the community plants saplings of fruit-bearing trees. So it's important to know about different communities, particularly those which is in the news and especially those communities which have been accorded scheduled tribe status. Now the tribal communities of Jammu and Kashmir, namely Bakerwal and Gujjars, were in news last year as well, as the central government had decided to implement the Forest Rights Act. Now the Gujjars and Bakerwal community constitute around 15% population of Jammu and Kashmir and are largely nomadic Muslim groups. So earlier, the tribal communities of Gujjar and Bakerwal were demanding extension of Forest Rights Act to Jammu and Kashmir so that they can also enjoy the rights on the forest land. And recently the government have provided individual and community rights certificate to Gujjar, Bakerwals and also Gaddi and Sippi tribal communities of Jammu and Kashmir under the Forest Rights Act. So it is in these backdrops this news highlights that members of Jammu Kashmir Gujjar Bakerwal Joint Action Committee, they met the Union Home Minister amidst fear that inclusion of Paharis within scheduled tribe community would impact or rather dilute their reservation under education and jobs. However, the government has assured the Gujjar and Bakerwal community that a special legislation will be brought into to ensure that inclusion of Paharis does not impact the current quota for scheduled tribes. Now the decision to include Pahari community within scheduled tribe has been recommended by G.D. Sharma Commission, and this recommendation has also been accepted by the National Commission for Scheduled Tribe. So in this regard, let's understand certain basic aspects about the Pahari community. Now the Pahari community includes both Hindus and Muslims and is largely based on the language spoken by them in the hills, namely in the Pir Panjal range. The Pahari communities largely resides in Rajouri, Poonch, Baramulla, Anantnag and also along the Kupwara districts. Now comparing the Gujjar Bakerwal and the Pahari community, it highlights that although the Gujjar Bakerwal tribes and Pahari communities are born in the same social and cultural milieu, the former, that is the Gujjar Bakerwal community, lives a nomadic life shuttling between Kashmir and Jammu regions with their livestock, whereas the Pahari community are socially stratified, economically well off and culturally moved with caste and other ethnic divisions. Now Paharis are largely found in the region between the Jhelum and Chenab rivers in the district of Poonch and Rajouri in Jammu and Uri of Baramulla district and Karna and Tangdar in Kupwara district. and Paharis are also spread in the Kashmir valley. Thus, this topic becomes important mainly from your prelims perspective with respect to human geography. With this, let's take up the next news for discussion. Now let's take up this lead article appearing on page number 6. And this article highlights about the problem of domestic violence in Indian societies. And here the heading says that still a nightmare for domestic violence survivors. While sharing experiences of violence was a powerful step for women, accessing services and support often resulted in uncertainty, fear, and disappointment for women subjected to domestic violence either by the husband or his relatives. So, this article highlights that despite numerous laws in India to curb domestic violence, yet, according to the National Family Health Survey, very few women report domestic violence cases, and this reporting of domestic violence cases is comparatively much lower in the rural India. Now, to ensure that domestic violence cases does not occur, the Government of India enacted the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. And this particular legislation not only defined domestic violence but also highlighted certain examples of domestic violence such as physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, and also economic abuse. And the aspect of domestic violence has also been provided under Section 498A of Indian Penal Code. So it highlights that a husband or the relative of the husband, if either of them subjects a woman to cruelty, they shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years and also shall be liable to fine. So domestic violence is a criminally punishable offense. And here the provision has also explained the term cruelty. So it says that any conduct by the husband or the relative which is likely to drive the woman to commit suicide, or she feels that any of their activity may put her life in great danger, and also includes mental torture. Now, another aspect of cruelty includes any unlawful demand for any property or valuable security by the husband or their relative. So, the Indian Penal Code has criminalized any aspect of cruelty which is committed by the husband or his relative on the woman or on his wife. And in order to provide more protection to women, the government legislated the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. And it says that this act provides for more effective protection of the rights of women guaranteed under the Constitution who are victims of violence of any kind occurring within the family. And this particular legislation has defined in detail about the meaning of domestic violence. So domestic violence includes both physical and mental torture. So it says that harms or injuries or any activity which endangers the health, safety, life, limb, or well-being, whether mental or physical, of the aggrieved person, and also includes causing physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, and also economic abuse. Further, it says that harasses, harms, injures, or endangers the aggrieved person with a view to coerce her or any other person related to her to meet any unlawful demand for any dowry or other property or valuable security. Now, both these provisions have been included within the explanation of cruelty under Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. And both these aspects have also been included within the definition of domestic violence under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. Now, moving further, this act particularly defines physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, and also economic abuse. And here, physical abuse means any abuse causing bodily pain, harm, or danger to life, limb, or health, or impair the development of the person, and includes assault, criminal intimidation, and use of criminal force against the person, that is, against the women. Sexual abuse includes any conduct of sexual nature that abuses, humiliates, degrades, or otherwise violates the dignity of women. And verbal and emotional abuse includes insults, ridicule, humiliation, name calling, and insults or ridicule, especially with regard to not having a child or a male child, and repeated threats to cause physical pain to any person in whom a aggrieved person is interested. Further, the Act defines in detail about the aspect of economic abuse, and it basically deals with deprivation of any economic or financial assistance or financial resources. So it says deprivation of all or any economic or financial resources to which the woman is entitled under any law or custom. Economic abuse also includes disposal of household effects, any alienation of assets, movable or immovable property, valuable shares, securities, bonds, which the aggrieved person, that is the woman, has an interest in or is entitled to use by virtue of domestic relationship. For example, selling the ornaments of the women without her approval or without her consent. And economic abuse also includes prohibiting or restricting continued access to resources or facilities which the woman is entitled to enjoy by virtue of a domestic relationship, including access to shared household. So the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005 has defined in detail about domestic violence, and the law has also appointed protection officers in case such domestic violences are reported. But the problem in India is that despite instances of domestic violence cases, these violences are hardly reported. And one of the major reasons for not reporting these domestic violence cases is because of the patriarchal nature of society and also because of fear and prejudices under which the women live. Now this article highlights about a survey where it found that there are two groups of women. The first group does not believe in filing domestic violence cases and they want the women to adjust to the needs of the husband or the relatives, whereas there are only few or a minority women and their family members who give priority to the women's life and their health and want to take steps against instances of domestic violence. But because of apathy from the system, including police, and lack of legal help at proper time, they are not able to achieve much. And because of this, they are forced to live in such abused relationship. So in this backdrop, this article highlights that why these women survivors of domestic violence never seek help. So the reasons are obviously because of the mindset of our patriarchal society and also because of obstacles, fear or prejudice which are generally faced by women in case they want to report domestic violence. Now reporting domestic violence to the police is generally not the first step, and the first step generally is to confide such cases of domestic violence among family members, and unless the family members are supportive, it is only then the woman approaches the police. Now this is a very rare instance in India, both in rural India and also in urban India. And it is here where the author highlights that according to the National Family Health Survey 5, only 14% of women who have experienced domestic violence have ever sought help with respect to the cases of domestic violence, and statistics for rural areas is much lower. So it has been observed that beating by husband is unfortunately justified even by other women, because according to them also breaking marriage is against social norm. So all these customs, traditions and patriarchal mindset of the society forces the woman to live in such abused relationship. It further says that reporting violence will bring shame and dishonor for the woman, and it becomes very difficult for her to stay alone. Another reason as to why women are reluctant or hesitant to report cases of domestic violence is because of economic dependency on the husband and their family members. Another reason highlighted here is that women suffering from domestic violence cases or abuses do not want to add a burden on others, especially their own family members. And even the parents of such women subjected to domestic violence are not very helpful and ask their daughters to adjust to such an environment. Now, another reason for not reporting such violence is obviously due to lack of witness, as any people in the village or in the society hardly turns up as a witness for such instances of domestic violence. And if the women report cases of domestic violence, then their relationship with the husband becomes very uncertain. And also because of lack of economic resources for the women, they hardly report such instances. Now, another set of reason is not only lack of access to free legal aid, but also lack of financial support to take up court cases. Now, this also prevents women from reporting cases of domestic violence. Now, it further says that police rarely report domestic violence cases even if women go and file for these cases. And in many instances, women are also sent back for reconciliation with their family members. Now, the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act provides for appointment of protection officers, but these officers are hardly appointed, and even if they are appointed, the officers are extremely under-resourced. So functioning for these officers becomes very difficult. Now for such few women who wants to report these cases, the road ahead is not very easy because they are either suggested to mediate or reconcile with the husband or to terminate the relationship. But this comes at a very high social cost. And for such women who approaches the police are very rare, and there is a long legal battle ahead with respect to terminating the relationship. So it is because of these reasons survivors of domestic violence in India hardly seeks help under Indian legislation. So based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for mains. The question is, despite numerous laws in India, domestic violence continues unabated. Give reasons and suggest measures to eradicate the evil of domestic violence from our society. And this question carries 15 marks. Thus, this article becomes important, particularly from the perspective of Indian society under GS Paper 1. Now let's take up this news appearing in the text and context section on page number 8. And this news highlights about the new technology used during the ongoing FIFA World Cup. And this new technology is semi-automated offside technology. Now this particular topic becomes important because of late UPSC has started asking questions also on sports and related events. Just look into this question asked last year in the prelims examination. The question was, consider the following statements in respect of the ICC World Test Championship. First statement, the finalists were decided by number of matches they won. And second, New Zealand was ranked ahead of England because it won more matches than England. And here you needed to know how teams were ranked with respect to ICC World Test Championship. And teams were ranked on the basis of percentage points and not on the basis of their victory. Hence the correct answer here was neither 1 nor 2, that is D. So in the same context, let us understand about new semi-automated offside technology. Now this technology will use a sensor fitted in the football, and this sensor will map the body movement of players. So here first of all understand about the offside rule used in football. So first and foremost, according to the International Football Association Board, offside can only occur on the attacking side of the field. Now if you have played football, then I'm sure you would know that both opponents choose a particular side. And one side becomes an attacking side, the other side becomes a defending side. So let's understand this through this example. Now here these red players are the defenders and the blue players are the attackers. That is, they are attacking and hence they want to convert this attack into goal. Now the rule of offline says that a player is in the offside position when an attacking player is nearer to opponent's goal line than both the ball and the second to the last opponent. Now this goalkeeper for the red team is the last opponent and the second last opponent is this person. So here what we do is just draw an imaginary straight line, and then we find that there are two persons from the blue team who are behind this straight imaginary line. So when this player from the blue team has the football, then there are two more members of the blue team who are behind this particular imaginary line where the opponent is standing. And if this player passes the football to this player, then the referee can call this as an offside. Now earlier this was very difficult for the referees to determine, and now there will be use of technology to determine offside. So regarding the semi-automated offside technology, it says that there are two parts to the technology: a sensor inside the match ball, that is football, which is held using suspension technology, and existing tracking tools that are part of the video assistant referee system or VAR system. So the sensor gives precise positional data and also detects ball movement in three-dimensional space. So this means that every time a ball is hit by the player, then the sensor sends real-time data. And additionally, there are 12 Hawkeye cameras set up around the field, which shadows both the ball and the players. And these cameras along with the sensors tracks as many as 29 separate points in the human body. So the camera and the sensors will detect whether a player is in an offside position, if any part of the head, body or feet is in the opponent's half, excluding the halfway line. So the semi-automated offside technology is coming together of the ball sensor and the Hawkeye cameras in effect. And these two data sets are run through artificial intelligence software, which generates automated alerts about offsides to the match officials. So technology is coming to aid to implement the rules of football. Thus, this news on semi-automated offside technology becomes important mainly from your prelims perspective with respect to general science. With this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS. And if you like our effort, then please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and also press the bell icon to never miss any video lessons from Rao's IAS.